Hi everyone, it's so good to be back here again. I love this event so much because this room is this gets me through the rest of the year. Like all of you incredible women supporting and uplifting each other. It's incredible. The three of you are just absolute powerhouses, and I love how the work that you do is also, it's so varied, it's so diverse, and I really want to talk and dig into a bit more of that. So I'm going to start off with each of you talking more personally about your own journeys into the jobs that you are now doing and kind of what you love about this industry and this town that you're in. So Gita, we're going to start with you. So I was just looking you up because you have this incredible background, and I love that you sort of moved through various roles within marketing and strategy, and now you're running operations at Crunchyroll. And I just would love to know kind of what took you on this path, what compelled you, what did you love about it? Tell us everything.
Sure. So why I'm laughing is because I've had so many different functions I've worked on, and then I've worked in so many different industries. So actually working at Sony is my first gig in entertainment. But I think what's connected me is, or my journey has been, when I was much younger, and I still believe this, like I want to make a difference. I want to change the world, or at least leave it off slightly better than I started with it. And that has taken me on a very circuitous journey where I have worked at the World Bank and I have worked in a car sharing company, always seeking a way that my heart and my brain can be satisfied together. And I think where I've landed at Crunchyroll and in entertainment is the perfect balance of something that is the world's most interesting puzzle to solve. And it is a puzzle because it is a very complex business, but also the benefits I see when people engage with the content that we're surfacing. It is so palpable. It has opened people's minds to new cultures, new stories, and it has energized me in a way that that is just really I haven't experienced in the past. So that has been my journey. That's why I think entertainment is incredibly rewarding on the business side and the creative side, because we do have the power to help share stories that will open hearts and minds. I know I've said that before, but it's really the truth.
No, it's amazing. Well, speaking of puzzles to solve, one of my favorite ones in my entire life, by the way. You did such a great. But let's talk about Tetris. Maya, this is, I feel like this was always going to be maybe the journey you were going to go on, but I'm curious about that when it's part of the family story and you have that legacy to carry, but it's also you're breaking so many boundaries and doing the work you're doing. How do you navigate all of that?
Well, it's interesting because I grew up around video games, not just because my parents were in it, obviously because my parents were in it, but in the 80s in Japan and the Nintendo console system, like everyone in my school had a Nintendo console, right? So it was part of my growing up. And it was never, like I was never groomed to take over the family business. If some of you have seen the Tetris movie, we could have been very, very poor. My dad could have lost everything. In fact, my mom put my grandfather's house as collateral to make cartridges for Nintendo. And when my dad got to the Soviet Union, and walked into the Ministry of Games, he found out that they never licensed the rights to him. So there he is in the Soviet Union on a tourist visa. This is like back in the 80s, so he's not even allowed to be there. He finds out that, wow, I've got my house, my in-laws' house on hold. And so it was never a guarantee, and having a Japanese mother, she said, I must go work for a big company after I graduate because that's what we must do. And so, my first job out of college was working at American Honda. And then I went to work for Sony on the PlayStation side. And when I came into the video game industry, it kind of felt like kind of right at home. Honda was very corporate and, both Japanese companies, but I felt like, wow, entertainment and video game, it was kind of a calling to me. Fast forward, when my dad was 52, he had a heart attack, a major heart attack. And he was still running the business. And I realized that this was the only chance that I had to go and work for him. So my husband, I convinced him, let's move to Hawaii. Maybe it wasn't too much convincing because Hawaii, but I made a leap of faith, and we moved to Hawaii to join the family business. And again, it wasn't like I wasn't groomed to take over, but I wanted to learn from him. And after a few years, I realized I think I could do this, you know? And so long story short, I think it was a combination of everything. I think we end up becoming a lot of what we're exposed to, right? That's why representation is so important. How you grow up, like your parents are teachers. Maybe you become a teacher, you're a doctor. You know, so for me, it was video games was a big factor in my life. But I did choose that path. And I do have 3 younger siblings. None of them are in video games. So that's my story.
I love it. I love that you're championing this and you're creating something new as well. It's amazing. Michelle, honestly, we've known each other for so long. When they were saying about you being at every event, that's how I know you. I've seen you at everything. You are there, you're supporting, you're constantly championing. And it's incredible to see the energy you put into this. I need more of that energy myself. But you have this really interesting path as well, because you kind of started out with a law degree, you've spent time, you produce films, you've also been a professor as well, you're teaching, and I just love, like, you've taken on all these different roles, and you're also the executive director of CAPE. So how do all of those things come together in the work that you do?
For me, it was really the thread through all of it is the Asian Pacific Islander community, and that's really how I've navigated and found myself to where I am today. So I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I never ever thought about race or what it was like to be Asian in the rest of the world, or at least in America, until I came to Los Angeles for college. And that's when I took my first Asian American Studies class, and I went all in and ended up majoring in it and getting it to be a 5-college degree at the place I graduated from. And so from there, that's when I knew that there was something inside of me that wanted to fight for our community, because I knew I was going to stay up here for a while. And then that led me into a legal field where I also was very active in the Asian American Bar Association scene and got to know a lot of the issues and the plights that face our community on the legal side. And then ultimately ended up doing entertainment work as a lawyer, and then loving CAPE as an organization. So I started off as a volunteer, and actually so did Jesbu, who's our communications manager. We met as volunteers for CAPE over 10 years ago. And then when the position came open, then I applied, and then I eventually coaxed Jess to come over full-time. And so I think that's what's really great about CAPE, is that we have a lot of really dedicated people who, even before they became full-time staff, they were already volunteering and giving their time and energy. So that makes me very happy.
Makes me very happy as well. So one of the things that I really wanted to ask you about was, a lot of us have been in this industry for a really long time, and you know, whether it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago even, you know, there was quite often the fact that we were siloed as a community, and what that could also foster, unfortunately, was a little bit of a competition versus collaboration mentality that we've seen sometimes, where, you know, because there was so few opportunities to step up and be able to represent, it felt like we almost had to compete against each other. So I'm curious to know, just, you know, as you have come through the industry, as we've increased as a community and come together, you know, how do we unlearn that competition mentality? We are Asian at the end of the day. We are going to want to compete in some ways, but how do we unlearn that to be more collaborative for our community as a whole? Anyone can take this.
Well, I'll go first, because then I'm gonna get less smart. I think, well, first of all, I think the fact that you guys were all here, you're already like ahead of the curve. When I was younger, I did feel that way, right? Where I didn't want to lean on other women. And as I got older and I got to know more women in the industry, I realized, oh my gosh, we're so much more powerful together than apart. And it doesn't help that we don't have colleagues that are the same gender and that is starting to change. But I will say that, I mean, you guys already know this, and so I would encourage you to reach out to other women, in the field, especially younger women, right? Because I think, again, we're like kind of grown up a certain way, like we're not supposed to be this or that, or, we have to be perfect and blah, blah, blah. And you don't know. And it's all about self-confidence and understanding your self-worth. And that takes time to learn. But if you get mentors that can help you guide the way, I think that could be a big change.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it is such an unlearning, but it's also like, how do we contend with that imposter syndrome as well? Do you guys have any specific advice on the imposter syndrome of it all? How do you sort of contend with that?
I mean, 100%. I just got promoted into a new role, and it would be very easy to, and it happens sometimes, right? You fall into a trap of like, did I make the right decision? Second guessing yourself. Mm-hmm. And, it's really unproductive thinking. Of course, we know that intellectually, but you can't change your DNA and what your emotions are going to tell you. And so personally, what I have felt is helpful for me is to make sure I'm taking spaces where I'm re-energizing myself and building up that confidence, and I'm walking into that room being like, I own this job. I mean, I own this job. I earned this job. I'm here for a reason. I have the job. I don't have anything to prove, and just focus on making the right decisions for the business. But, I also like that there's a good degree of humility. I mean, people who have imposter syndrome, a lot of times it comes from a place of deep humility, right? And I also love that and want to recognize other people who have that humility. I want to create a culture of humility within my own organization. So I'm not going to beat myself up for feeling the way that I am, but I also know that I also want to reflect that confidence to all the other women in my organization who are looking at me and looking at the way I conduct myself in this new role, and say, yeah, I earned this.
Yeah, you did. I think that's also where community and support come into play, because there was that study that a woman won't apply for a position unless she's like 95% qualified, or she feels that way. And whereas like a white man will apply if they're 60% or something, right? And so it's like, how can we support each other to push us to make those choices and take those stands?
That stat, by the way, I remind myself of that every single day. We need to remember that, because sometimes it's just having the audacity, which I try to do more and more nowadays.
And I think it's also, it takes a certain comfort level to ask for what you want. I think it's a very challenging thing. I see this a lot when we're interviewing candidates, for example, that people have different comfort levels asking for what you want. And I would say a really practical tool is that you have to ask for it in a way that feels authentic to you, but don't be scared to ask for what you want. That is so important. We need to ask. And, I'm sure my boss would not be happy to hear me say this in a public group, but I asked for my job. And we sat down, and I had to figure out the right way to ask for it in a way that felt authentic to me and that didn't feel like it was self-serving. And so I did have to practice that conversation, I have to admit, in the mirror. But it was a really amazing conversation because, so I hope that, women can, find that voice if you don't feel like you have it right now, to kind of ask for what you want, because that's kind of where it starts.
I honestly love that. Like, ask for what you want. You deserve to be there. That's the main thing. You bring up an important part of keeping your authenticity while asking for what you want and keeping those core values. And I kind of wanted to ask each of you, because this panel we're hoping to sort of go over, what makes you you and how you hold on to your values and the work that you do. And so one big part of that is literally the word authentic. It gets thrown around all the time. Everyone is asking for authentic stories, authentic storytellers. We love that. But what does that mean? And so just for each of you in very different areas of this industry, I would love to hear what authentic means to you and how you go about implementing that in your work. I'm going to throw it to Maya. Yeah.
Me again. Okay, me again. Authenticity to me means following your heart, following your intuition. Often we know how we feel, our gut feelings, but we're kind of afraid to follow it because our mind gets in the way. And so it's really kind of getting your mind and your heart kind of aligned so that you can make those decisions. Because at the end of the day, when you make the wrong decision, like you feel it, right? And like maybe the relationship doesn't work out. And so like we're a licensing business. We work with so many different companies, but the major ones, we must make sure that it's a win-win, that they're coming to the table and they have the right intentions, as do we. And that's how you become successful. So follow your heart, ladies and men. More men, maybe. Follow your heart.
Yeah. Michelle?
I think akin to that, it would be living your values. And just like Maya was saying, you know when you're going against it and you feel that cognitive dissonance. And so I think this word, though, authentic, yeah, it comes up a lot. And I just had a heated discussion with another leader in the entertainment space about what is an authentic story and like who should be policing that. And so like from our standpoint at Cape, we don't police the authenticity of stories, and our stance is that it's whatever's authentic to that storyteller, because there's so many different stories and so many different experiences that no one really should be the arbiter of what or what is not authentic in storytelling. So that's something that when we provide our consulting work, for example, we say this is not censorship, these are conversations. And so we'll pose questions, or we'll have more layered conversations about why they want to do what they want to do, or why they want to showcase a particular storyline in a certain way. And then that will open up avenues, usually, of solutions that we can come to together.
Yeah, I love that. Gita, do you have any more to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think anime is oftentimes described as an authentic medium, and I think what I've come to appreciate working with these stories over the last, several years is it is very respectful of the creator's original intent.
Yeah.
And that may not be always popular, and it doesn't have to be misaligned with commercial interests. But it's just the entire anime industry is very respectful of the original creators and intent in a way that I haven't seen in other mediums. And so that comes across. And I think in a world, especially where people characterize Gen Z and alphas as seeking authenticity, but I think what they're articulating is a much more universal sort of desire from all of us to get into the heart of the storyteller, to your point, Maya, I love what you said, and less about, potentially what's being sort of strategically chosen to share. And I think that's something that I've learned definitely in the last few years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I also feel, though, that diversity is another word that's thrown around. We still don't entirely know what it means, but it means everything, apparently. And I do think that word, authenticity, diversity, have become part of the Hollywood machine right now. And we're being told that our perspectives, like diverse storytellers, our perspectives are so important. They need that. At the end of the day, though, when those stories are made, how do we make sure that POC creators are not exploited for their perspectives and their ideas only for the money to go to non-POC? How do we make sure that ecosystem is uplifting our communities and making sure that those storytellers get to, retain that recognition for the work that they are doing and bringing to the table? It's a tough one, I know, but whoever wants to take a stab at it first. I like that everyone just looked at Michelle, by the way.
I felt that. I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to talk about executives and the people who are making the decisions, the quote unquote, the gatekeepers, right? And the decision makers, and do they look like us? Are they from our community? And are they really championing and uplifting the talent behind the camera and in front of the camera from our own communities as well? And it's not just someone coming from outside telling our stories. I think that's maybe where the exploitation concern can creep in.
Yeah, that makes sense. How much do you see this in either the anime world or the gaming world even?
Yeah, I mean, I think for our company, the fact that I'm female, like I look at other females as my equals, or they're even smarter than me. You know, you want to surround yourself with smart people, and so like it's female empowerment is a very big kind of mission in my life. So I try to make sure that, you know, I do give equal opportunities to women. But maybe talking about the movie and how that process came about, when we were working with the filmmakers, it was really important for us to have that authentic voice and representation. So it was mentioned earlier that, you know, in the role, like I speak Japanese because that's what I spoke until I was 11, so I didn't speak in English. In hindsight, my character could have spoke English, right? But the fact that they wanted to stay authentic and give that voice was important because my mother was Japanese and we were Japanese, and I'm so proud that like today we could have that movie, which was, you know, a major movie, and we have representation of the Japanese culture, a mixed culture, which is the story of us, you know? And so I think throughout the movie making process, it was important for me to make sure that some of those important key elements of my life were represented. Does that answer the question?
You did. It was a really nice way of answering it as well, which is more personal. Like, how about for you, Gita?
I think I can only speak from the Crunchyroll perspective, so I don't know how easy this is to replicate, but one of the things I'm most proud of our company is that we are about something bigger than ourselves. Mm-hmm. We are about supporting the entire ecosystem of anime, whether that is on the Crunchyroll streaming service or others. And I think that's a pretty unique position. And because of that, we structure our relationships in a slightly different way, where if there is success, there's mutual success for us and our partners. And I think that's really core to our mission, and is also somewhat unique, but I think also really resonates with the customer too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds like a model that should be implemented everywhere, where like everyone is benefiting from the success of something. So hopefully whoever needs to take notes takes notes. I don't know. And I know we don't have a ton more time left. By the way, I had like so many questions for all of you. I can spend hours talking to all of you to pick your brains. But one thing I would like to know as we wrap up is, what is one project that each of you have been able to champion? I feel like I might know your answer to this, but what is one project you've been really proud to champion and bring to us, that you feel represents the progress that you want to see and you want to keep creating? And the second part of that is, what are still the biggest challenges that each of you need to navigate in the immediate future? We're talking within like the next 12 months or so.
Well, I'm going to shift away from Tetris because we also have a startup accelerator that I mentioned. I think what we're trying to do, our biggest accomplishment is really, we've created an ecosystem in Hawaii that is based on entrepreneurship. And we have seen the economy grow in that way, that people know who we are. And we do annual conferences, which actually is coming up March 14th, 15th, if you guys want to come to Hawaii. But it's really celebrating entrepreneurship, you know, not just in Hawaii, but outside of Hawaii, and companies that are looking from east to west, west to east. And so really building that community for a future and for Hawaii, and also looking at female representation as a big one. And that would be, I think, our biggest challenge that we face is finding more female entrepreneurs, right? So like, I've heard the study, like, I think it was like 30% of the men, right? They're like at 30% and they're applying for the jobs that they don't qualify for. More women need to come to the table and like go after, you know, what they believe, because we see the difference. Like, we see the females are way more I wouldn't say capable. They're more prepared, right? To like, sorry, if there are no men in here. The females come to the table more prepared. And so we see that they're more, anyway, that they're overachievers, right? Whereas the men kind of figure it out, and then they're sometimes able to raise money because they've got the confidence. But the women have the work all lined up. And so I think the biggest challenge really is that empowering still the female entrepreneurs and women in general to kind of come up to the plate and own up to, you know, what they already have, right? Own up to what your power is.
Yeah, have that audacity. I love it. Yeah. How about you, Gita?
I think one thing I'm very proud of is that next week, Saturday, is the 8th Crunchyroll Anime Awards, which is a celebration just for anime of any anime. Doesn't necessarily have to be on the Crunchyroll service. It's a big opportunity for us to share a spotlight globally on all of the creators of this amazing content that a lot of times I think the fans really want to see, but obviously don't have access to. So really proud of that. I think just something I'm working on in the future is, you know, and this is, I'm a work in progress, first to admit, but, you know, just leading with empathy. I think at this, I remember when I was in business school seeing a research study that women who were viewed as warm were also viewed as less competent.
Yes.
And I don't know if that would still hold true if it was polled today, but it may. And I remember thinking, that's not good for me because I consider myself a very warm person. And so I want to change that and do my part to change that.
I think that's a really good goal to move towards. And Michelle, how about you?
We're all works in progress, right?
Yeah,
And that's the only way that
absolutely.
growth happens is when we recognize that and work on it. One project that I was really excited about is a film called Joyride. I hope most of you have seen it. Okay, amazing. It was the directorial debut of Adele Lim, who's one of our longtime mentors and one of our advisors, and also written by Cherry Chiba-Prabhat-Damrong and Teresa Xiao, and just really showcase that Asian women can be on the big screen, we can have fun, we can be loud, and so I really championed that project, and I hope if people haven't watched it yet, that you will still check it out. I think it's streaming now. And one thing I'm excited about that's very in line with today's event is called Radiance. It's CAPE's annual fundraiser championed by Julia Gao. And it's really a celebration of Asian Pacific Islander women and non-binary achievement in entertainment. It's the only event of its kind that's actually held during National Women's History Month. And it was something that Julia actually brought up to us and said, do you know that there's nothing in March for Asian women and non-binary achievement in Hollywood? And so we started it last year. We're bringing it back this year. It's going to be on March 11th at the beautiful Abel, which is also itself a wonderfully aligned venue. It's a women's college, and it was started a long time ago by women for women. And so hopefully you can all join us there.
Perfect. March 11th, March 14th.
Then we'll go to Hawaii. Yes.
I love this. We're all just going to show up to the events and keep supporting.
There we go.
So thank you so much. Congratulations on your recognition today. And the work that all three of you are doing is incredible. You're paving new paths. You're inspiring everyone around you. And I'm just so excited to see what you continue to do. And let's all show up for March 11th and March 14th.